Blessed are you, O Yahweh, our God, King of the universe. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and will not be afraid. For Yahweh God is my strength and my song, and he has become my salvation. With joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation, and you will say in that day, give thanks to Yahweh, call upon his name, make known his deeds among the peoples, proclaim that his name is exalted.
Imagine looking north on a clear night, stars wheel in perfect circles around one fixed point, the North Celestial Pole. But that fixed point isn't fixed forever, because Earth's axis wobbles like a spinning top, completing one full cycle every 26,000 years. This is precession, and it traces the Northern Celestial Pole in a grand circle through the stars. It's what ancient observers and biblical symbolism might call the northern wheel of precession, also known as Ezekiel's wheel within a wheel. At the heart of this wheel are the northern circumpolar constellations, Ursa Minor, which is home to our current pole star Polaris, Ursa Major, the Big Dipper, Cassiopeia, the W or M shape, Cepheus, the King, and Draco, the Dragon. These never set for northern viewers. They circle endlessly around the pole, forming what might be called a celestial mountain or hub. Over millennia, the pole drifts along this wheel. Around 3000 BC, Thuban in Draco, the Dragon constellation, was the pole star. But later, Kochab and Ursa Minor took over. Today, Polaris shines closest, but in around 3000 CE, Gamma Cephei, or Eri the shepherd, and Cepheus will claim the spot. Scripture echoes this. Ezekiel saw 4 living creatures, a lion, an ox, a man, and an eagle, around a fiery amber throne from the north with wheels within wheels. Revelation mirrors Ezekiel's vision, a rainbow throne, elders, and those same creatures. This northern wheel symbolizes the highest heaven, or the sides of the north, God's mount of assembly. Isaiah warned of Lucifer's fall because he sought to ascend to the, quote, reaches, the far reaches of the north, above the stars. Now Revelation 12 shows the dragon whose tail sweeps a third of the stars down, perhaps echoing how Draco occupies roughly a third of this northern precessional wheel. Thuban, or the large snake, once crowned the pole, but precession cast it down, just as pride cast Satan from heaven's heights. The Mazzaroth isn't pagan astrology. It's God's silent declaration in the heavens, reflecting spiritual truths beyond mere stars that we can see. The northern wheel reminds us, earthly powers rise and fall, but Yahweh's throne stands eternal, unchanging amid the slow cosmic dance that we can observe. Stick around as we connect this to the star of the Magi and Yeshua's birth, as it's all part of the same magnificent heavenly story. Before we get too deep, I'll need to begin with some background info on biblical astrology and share a few of the various theories as to what scholars propose could be the real star of the Magi, the supernatural astrological sign of the Messiah, the Son of Man. This is going to be a long but very deep episode, so buckle up. Before proceeding, I recommend that the viewer watch all the episodes up to this point, but especially Part 1, Episode 8, The Mazzaroth and a Jubilee of Mercy.
Warning. None of the following materials should be construed to support pagan astrology or occult practices, which are a perversion of God's created order that He established in the heavens for our benefit and His glory. Proceed with caution when becoming acquainted with this material.
Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising, and have come to pay him homage.
We have established a general range of possible dates for Yeshua's birth. I propose that he was born on Tishri 1 of 3 BCE. Provided here is a cursory view of the opinions put out by some leading scholars regarding Yeshua's birth date and the sign the Magi were given of the star of the Messiah. I will conclude this section with my own detailed observations supporting his 3 BCE birth date. The first option is March 20th, 6 BCE. Rick Lanzer places the birth of Messiah on March 20th, 6 BCE. His interpretation given for the star of the Magi is based upon the work of Michael Molnar. 2 lunar occultations of Jupiter in Aries, each 1 month apart, during the heliacal rising of Jupiter. According to Ptolemy and others, Aries is the constellation pertaining to Herod's kingdom. The first occultation occurred on March 20th, which was Messiah's birth date. The second occurred on April 17th, which corresponds to when the Magi saw this astrological sign again as it stood over where the young child was. The next opinion is September 13th of 5 BCE. Andrew Gabriel Roth places the birth of Messiah on September 13th of 5 BCE. This was a Friday, Tishri 15, and the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot. A total lunar eclipse happened after sunset on this date, which appeared as a brilliant, blood-red supermoon. His interpretation of the star of the Magi is based upon Jupiter's heliacal rising on May 27th, 5 BCE. Preceding this was a comet from March 6th to April 5th in 5 BCE, only visible during the month of Aviv, or Nisan, which would have been interpreted as an omen of difficult times ahead. Roth identifies at least 24 astrological signs either leading up to or following Messiah's birth. An explanation of his position can be found online at the following link. Let's talk about the heliacal rising of Jupiter and what it means. The proposition that the Magi referred to a heliacal rising is premised upon the use of the Greek word Anatole.
Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him. Matthew 2:2.
Thayer's Greek lexicon gives the following primary meaning to this word as, quote, a rising of the sun and stars, or light rising. Its word origin is from the Greek anatello, which means to rise. Therefore, the Magi weren't stating that they saw the star as they were located to the east, but rather that they saw the star as it rose. The sun, moon, and stars all rise in the east and set in the west due to the Earth's spin. The planet Jupiter is associated with kingship, and its heliacal rising is thought by many to have signified the imminent birth of the Jewish Messiah in the minds of the Magi. Every so often, Jupiter has a superior conjunction with the Sun, meaning it passes directly behind the Sun, with Earth on the opposite side. From Earth's viewpoint, Jupiter becomes invisible for a few weeks before it reemerges in the pre-dawn eastern sky and becomes known as the morning star. The day this occurs is known as a heliacal rising, and this occurs with several visible planets and stars. Now, the visible planets at this time to these ancient peoples were the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, and so each of these planets would have a heliacal rising and be known as a morning star when this occurs. Yeshua, who will rule all nations with an iron scepter, according to Revelation 19:15, is symbolized as the morning star of kingship, or the heliacal rising of Jupiter, by his possession of this Davidic authority, according to Revelation 22:16. And he grants this authority over the nations to those who overcome, according to Revelation 2:26-28. So these astrological symbols are symbolizing the kind of authority that Yeshua possesses, and the authority that he has the right to give to those who overcome. The ancients' understanding of a planet was simply a wandering star, derived from the Greek asteres planetae. This is because, from our perspective, the planets move across the sky, unlike the relatively fixed stars. The heliacal rising of a planet is accompanied by a conjunction with the sun within days beforehand. One difficulty with assigning such significance to the heliacal rising of a planet is that this event alone is not rare. Jupiter's heliacal rising happens roughly every 399 days, or 13.1 months, and this is known as its mean synodic period. So every 13.1 months, it will have its next heliacal rising, but this will occur 33 degrees further in right ascension around the Mazzaroth into the next house. This distance is known as its mean synodic arc. Because Jupiter's mean synodic period is 13.1 months, it will only have its heliacal rising in the same astrological house again every 12 to 13 years, making it a more rare event. The Sun and Jupiter rising in the exact same position occurs every 427 years, and by that time, Jupiter will have gone through 391 heliacal risings and traversed the Mazzaroth 36 times. But it will only have risen in the same house approximately 33 times in those 427 years. The Mazzaroth house in which Jupiter has its heliacal rising adds significance to its interpretation. Molnar insists that Aries, the ram, is the house which pertains to the Jewish people, or Israel. And this is because Ptolemy asserted that the, quote, inhabitants of Cole Syria, Idumea, and Judea are more closely familiar to Aries and Mars. Molnar also relies on the accounts of several other Roman or Greek historians and astrologers, as well as numismatic evidence or coin evidence, pointing to the significance of Jupiter and Aries as it relates to Roman kings and their horoscopes. Others and I argue that Leo, the lion, is the house which pertains specifically to Judah, the royal tribe of Israel, and therefore the Messianic king. As far as biblical astrology is concerned, Leo should be viewed as the national symbol of Israel. The first astrological messianic prophecy was given by Balaam.
A star will come forth from Jacob, and a scepter will arise from Israel. Numbers 24:17.
The imagery of a young lion and Jacob's blessing to Judah suggests that the scepter of kingship belongs to a lion recently born, lending itself to a birth symbolism.
Judah is a young lion, my son, you return from the prey. Like a lion he crouches and lies down, like a lioness who dares to rouse him. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the staff from between his feet, until Shiloh comes and the allegiance of the nations is his. Genesis 49:9-10.
Revelation 5:5 refers to Yeshua as the Lion of the tribe of Judah and as the root of Jesse, indicating his regal lineage. It then equates him to the heavenly Lamb, which is an infant ram. Thus, the astrological texts of Revelation 5 used both lion and ram imagery to represent Yeshua the Messiah. This may indicate that both are appropriate, but that the lion imagery pertains specifically to his regal lineage, whereas the ram pertains to his priestly office.
Then one of the elders said to me, "Do not weep. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has triumphed to open the scroll and its 7 seals. Then I saw a lamb who appeared to have been slain, standing in the center of the throne, encircled by the 4 living creatures and the elders. The lamb had 7 horns and 7 eyes, which represent the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. And he came and took the scroll from the right hand of the one seated on the throne. Revelation 5:5-6.
The Lamb is situated centrally, surrounded by the 4 living creatures and 24 elders, just as the priestly tribe of Levi was situated centrally within the encampment of Israel. The Lamb had 7 eyes, which represent the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth, and these 7 spirits are symbolized by the 7 visible planets. I want to remind the viewer that these are symbols that the Creator created and designed to communicate with us, and not the realities themselves. Idolatry is when we take these symbols and worship them as gods, rather than acknowledging the Creator who made them. This concept will come up again when we get into the book of Revelation in the Greater Apocalypse. In 6 BCE, Jupiter had its heliacal rising in Aries. Because of Jupiter's mean synodic arc, the following year its heliacal rising occurred in Taurus. But in 3 BCE, Jupiter's heliacal rising occurred in Leo. Here is a chart outlining Jupiter's heliacal rising from 6 BCE to 2 BCE. Jupiter's heliacal rising. 6 BC had its rising in the house of Aries on April 17th. 5 BC rose in Taurus on May 24th. 4 BC rose in Gemini on June 28th. 3 BCE rose in Leo on August 1st. And 2 BCE rose in Virgo on September 2nd. Jupiter is a Latin word meaning sky father. Jupiter is the largest planet and is known as the king planet. To the Romans, Jupiter was the king of the gods, an equivalent to the Greek Zeus. Jupiter is named Zedek by Hebrew astronomers, and Zedek means righteousness. Thus, Jupiter is representative of the king of righteousness, or in Hebrew, Melchizedek. In Genesis 14:18, we are introduced to a character known as the priest of God Most High, and his title or name was Melchizedek. In Hebrews chapter 7, Yeshua is likened unto Melchizedek. There is little doubt that Jupiter is the planet associated with the crowning of the Jewish king Yeshua, and this is the position held by the Tesseract order of Magi. Balaam's prophecy says a star will come from Israel, and also calls this star a scepter, which denotes kingship. Thus, a king's star will arise from Israel, according to this prophecy. Jacob's blessing identifies that the kingly scepter belongs to the tribe of Judah. So now we can see that the whole prophecy says that the king's star will rise in Judah, which is symbolized by a recently born lion. Malachi provides one more messianic prophecy with astrological undertones.
But for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in its wings, and you will go out and leap like calves from the stall. Malachi 4:2.
Here, Son of Righteousness reads Shemesh Zedekah. This word Zedekah originates from Zedek, the Hebrew name for Jupiter. Thus, this prophecy is characterized as a Jupiter-oriented sunrise. In the Greek, the word for rise is once again anatello, further solidifying its prophetic use to refer to sunrise rather than simply east. Thus, the verse may be communicating an astrological sign of his coming, namely, the heliacal rising of Jupiter. Peter confirms that the concept of heliacal rising, or what he calls the morning star, was intended by the prophets as they spoke of the coming of the Messiah.
We also have the word of the prophets as confirmed beyond doubt. And you will do well to pay attention to it, as to a lamp shining in a dark place, until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your hearts. 2 Peter 1:19.
Jupiter's heliacal rising in Leo on August 1st of 3 BCE would have had signified a potential significant event pertaining to the tribe of Judah, which is the tribe to which kingship is attributed. Jupiter's nearest Leo risings would have been around 16 BCE and 11 CE, meaning this is the only Leo rising that occurs during any candidate year for Messiah's possible birth. Knowing that the prophecies of Daniel chapter 9 indicated an imminent arrival of the Messiah, the Magi would have considered this highly noteworthy and would have watched for further confirmation. And because of their advanced skill in tracking and predicting the movement of astronomical bodies, they likely would have been aware that Jupiter would come into conjunction with Regulus within a few weeks. As we have covered previously, the chief star of the Leo constellation is Regulus, which means prince or little king. It is also called Kalb al-Assad, which means heart of the lion. This designation of heart of the lion can be found on the chest of the Great Sphinx of Giza, which is formed by the body of Leo and the head of its opposition, Aquarius. Regulus is the brightest star on the ecliptic, and the most dominant of the four royal stars. These stars are positioned at right angles to each other on the ecliptic, meaning they represent the four cardinal directions, and each serve as a guardian of the four sections of heaven. The four royal stars are each the respective chief star or alpha star of their constellation. Their directional associations are linked to their original celestial positions at the time of the vernal equinox at creation, around 3957 BCE, which was during the age of Taurus. These associated cardinal directions for each star are listed in this chart. The four royal stars. Regulus is the chief star or alpha star of Leo, and it represents the face of a lion, with its direction being north. Aldebaran in Taurus, which is the ox, and its direction is east. Fomalhaut in Aquarius, representing the man, its direction being south. And Antares in Scorpio or Aquila, representing a scorpion or eagle, its direction is west. Scorpio is dual-natured with Aquila, so it's associated with both serpents and eagles. The eagle represents the higher expression. Scorpio represents the reproductive organ, and circumcision is symbolic of cutting off the sinful flesh and transcending spiritually. In biblical symbolism, Aquila, the eagle, replaces Scorpio, or death, as death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? Found in 1 Corinthians 15, 54-55. This chart of the four royal stars shows an image of the constellations. Here we can see each of the alpha stars in each of these constellations: Regulus in Leo, Aldebaran in Taurus, Fomalhaut in Aquarius, and Antares in Scorpio. Ezekiel describes a vision of four living creatures, animated by the Spirit of Yahweh, which seemed to operate wheel-like structures. Above their heads was an awesome, crystal-like expanse, and above this expanse was a sapphire rainbow throne on which the glory of Yahweh sat, whilst in the appearance of a man. The scene depicted by Ezekiel chapter 1 seems to be describing the spiritual reality that exists behind the curtains, so to say, of the Mazzaroth. In other words, the Mazzaroth is being depicted in this chapter, but the Mazzaroth is symbolic of the spiritual reality that exists in the true heavenly realm beyond merely the stars, planets, and galaxies.
I looked and saw a whirlwind coming from the north, a great cloud with fire flashing back and forth and brilliant light all around it. In the center of the fire was a gleam like amber, and within it was the form of 4 living creatures. The form of their faces was that of a man, and each of the 4 had the face of a lion on the right side, the face of an ox on the left side, and also the face of an eagle. Such were their faces. Ezekiel 1:4 and 10-11.
You see, the Mazzaroth is not the true heaven, but reflects the spiritual realities of heaven. The 4 creatures described match the 4 royal guardians of heaven found at the 4 cardinal directions of the Mazzaroth wheel. This passage describes a wind of fire emanating from a northern position. Its core is described as amber or red-orange, hot glowing stones. This northernmost mountain of amber represents the highest heaven as symbolized in the northern wheel of precession, i.e., the circumpolar wheel of constellations. This is the heavenly mountain of fire, similar to how God visited Moses and the Israelites on the earthly mountain of fire at Horeb, where he commanded the people that they should have no other gods before him. This same celestial phenomenon is depicted in Revelation chapter 4.
At once I was in the Spirit, and I saw a throne standing in heaven with someone seated on it. The one seated there looked like jasper and carnelian, and a rainbow that gleamed like an emerald encircled the throne. Surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones, and on these thrones sat 24 elders dressed in white, with golden crowns on their heads. From the throne came flashes of lightning and rumblings and peals of thunder. Before the throne burned 7 torches of fire. These are the 7 spirits of God. And before the throne was something like a sea of glass as clear as crystal. In the center around the throne were 4 living creatures, covered with eyes in front and back. The first living creature was like a lion, the second like a calf, the third had a face like a man, and the fourth was like an eagle in flight. And each of the 4 living creatures had 6 wings and was covered with eyes all around and within. Revelation 4:2-8.
The same rainbow throne is described as being surrounded by 24 elders. Each of the 12 houses of the Mazzaroth are given 2 ark hours, totaling 24 ark hours of right ascension. Just as there are 7 torches of fire, there are 7 visible planets in order from brightest to dimmest: Sun, Moon, Venus, Jupiter, Mars, Mercury, and Saturn. Many aspects of the Mazzaroth correspond to God's order for Israel, including the 24 priestly divisions, the 12 months of the year, 12 tribes, 12 disciples, 12 loaves of showbread, 7 candlesticks of the menorah, and more. 4 living creatures surround the throne: a lion, a calf, a man, and an eagle. Each of these correspond to the 4 cardinal directions of the Mazzaroth, consisting of Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, and Scorpio or Aquila, and their respective fixed royal stars, Regulus, Aldebaran, Fomalhaut, and Antares, which serve as stable pillars of heaven. These pillars also correspond to the 4 seasons, and ancient civilizations used these pillars in their tracking of the equinoxes and solstices throughout time. The Great Sphinx is aligned with the eastern horizon, facing the sun perfectly at sunrise at the vernal equinox, marking the beginning of spring. At the autumnal equinox, the sun again rises due east in alignment with the Sphinx, marking the start of fall. The spring and fall equinoxes are the only 2 times per year that the sun rises due east and sets due west. This Sphinx will gaze directly at one of the 4 royal stars approximately every 6,480 years, which is 1/4 of the period of one complete cycle of the equinoxes around the ecliptic, which is known as the Great Year or a precessional cycle. This means that the royal stars rotate their cardinal position every 6,480 years, with a new star taking the position of due east at the vernal equinox. Again, these are not the actual spiritual realities of heaven, but they serve as symbolic representations of the spiritual realities that exist beyond the visible heavens. It is Yahweh who has set the stars in the heavens, called them by name, and established the pillars and laws of heaven to serve as his mouthpiece and to bring him glory.
In which path does the light dwell, and what is the place of darkness? If you know her border and the paths of her house. Have you seized on the face of the Pleiades, or have you seen the path of the giant Orion? Behold, shall you bring forth the wagoner in its time, or have you stood at the face of the star Aldebaran? Do you know the law of heaven, or do you lay down the law in the earth? Are you sending lightnings and they go and say to you, here we are? Job 38:19-20 and 31-33 and 35.
The Babylon Star Catalog, Mul Apin, the Plough, lists 18 stations that serve as the predecessors to the 12 signs of the zodiac. The first on the list is Pleiades, which is a star cluster found in Taurus, whose chief star is Aldebaran, and is approximated by the Sun at the vernal equinox in the early Bronze Age. Many claim that Aldebaran was considered by ancient civilizations to be the guardian of the eastern celestial sky, and Regulus the guardian of the northern. This may be because the Sun's position during the vernal equinox occurred in Taurus from around 4638 to 2478 BCE, with its royal star Aldebaran visible due east around 3000 BCE, marking celestial east. Scorpio with Antares was in opposition, due west. At this time, Regulus was the marker of the summer solstice, and thus represented celestial north, whilst Fomalhaut marked the winter solstice and celestial south. This time was known as the Age of Taurus because the vernal equinox occurred in this constellation, which is represented by a bull. The worship of Baal, or Molech, the bull, was paramount amongst the pagan cultures of that age. These idolatrous cultures had taken the imagery in the heavens and bowed down to them as gods, a practice strictly prohibited by Deuteronomy 4:19. The equinoxes precessed into Aries from approximately 2478 to 318 BCE, and into Pisces from approximately 318 BCE to 1843 CE. 1843 was the first year the Sun's position at the vernal equinox occurred in Aquarius. In the current day, the Sphinx faces east into Aquarius at the vernal equinox, and into Leo at the autumnal equinox. This means that we are nearing the time that Aquarius's chief star, Fomalhaut, will officially rise due east at the vernal equinox, and Regulus at the autumnal equinox. In about 10,000 BCE, theoretically, this was in the opposite configuration, with Regulus occupying the eastern position at the vernal equinox. It is the precession of the equinoxes that rotates the royal stars' positions relative to the sun at the equinoxes and solstices. There may be significance to this feature because Judah was positioned to the eastern portion of the camp of Israel during the wilderness journey. Numbers chapter 2 gives the encampment positions with Judah to the front or east, with Issachar and Zebulun flanking. Here's a chart outlining these positions and their ensigns according to Jewish tradition in Numbers chapter 2. Here we see the encampment of Israel, with on the east side, or the front, being Judah, flanked by Issachar and Zebulun, and Judah is said to be represented by a lion. The south with Reuben, represented by a man. The west with Ephraim, represented by an ox, and the north with Dan, represented by an eagle. One may wonder why Ephraim is considered by the rabbis to be associated with the ox if he is occupying the position of Quirius, the man, to the west. And perhaps there is a hidden truth found in the Mazzaroth that points to a higher spiritual reality. Reuben, who is typified as a man, gave up his birthright when he slept with his father Jacob's concubine Bilhah. The birthright was given to Joseph's sons Ephraim and Manasseh in 1 Chronicles 5, 1 and 2. But specifically, this birthright was given to Ephraim, who was considered to be the firstborn with the right-hand blessing in Genesis 48, even though Manasseh was technically older. Ephraim became the promise carrier of the line of Joseph, and in Genesis 49, Joseph is characterized as a fruitful vine, just like Yeshua characterizes himself in John 15:5. He is also characterized as a man with strong arms or ox-like strength, who has his arms steadied and tempered to wield a bow by the mighty one of Jacob in the name of the shepherd, the rock of Israel. Reuben is described as a firstborn who lost his position due to his wild nature. He's also described as the beginning of Jacob's strength. The first letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Aleph, and it represents strength. In pictograph form, it is the head of an ox. Therefore, in a prophetic sense, the Mazzaroth foretold of Reuben's transition from a firstborn male to a wild ox, and Ephraim's transformation from a wild ox to the firstborn promise carrier. And this may be why the encampment of Israel has Ephraim occupying the western portion, symbolized by a man in the Mazzaroth, and Reuben occupying the southern portion, symbolized as an ox in the Mazzaroth, even though the rabbis have typically characterized them in the opposite manner. In the center of the camp was the tabernacle and camp of the Levites that traveled with it. The encampment of Israel, with its 12 tribes and 4 leader tribes corresponding to the 4 cardinal directions, is just like the Mazzaroth, with the holy mountain central to and elevated in glory where the presence of Yahweh dwells. Satan attempted to ascend unto the, quote, sides of the north and become like the Most High. Here, the king of Babylon is being addressed, yet it's Satan who is being addressed spiritually.
How you have fallen from heaven, O day star, son of the dawn! You have been cut down to the ground, O destroyer of nations. You said in your heart, I will ascend to the heavens, I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of assembly in the far reaches of the north. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds, I will make myself like the Most High. Isaiah 14:12-14.
In astrological terms, Satan attempted to usurp God's throne in the highest of heavens. This corresponds to the northern celestial hemisphere, in which the circumpolar constellations exist. These constellations make up the northern celestial wheel consisting of Cassiopeia, Cepheus, Draco, Ursa Minor, the North Star, and Ursa Major. This may be what Ezekiel referred to when he described the wheel within a wheel. When a viewer on Earth looks towards celestial north, they can see the northern circumpolar constellations. If a camera is set to focus upon celestial north for a time lapse of the night sky, the resultant image or video will reveal that the star trails form concentric circles. This is due to the Earth's rotation around its axis. Therefore, when focusing upon its celestial axis, the stars form circular rotational patterns. When focusing upon any other area of the sky, the star trails will form ellipses because the viewer is no longer focused upon the celestial axis. This is one easily verifiable proof of the spherical shape of the Earth, because this phenomenon is not possible on a flat Earth. It also demonstrates the wheel formation of the northern circumpolar constellations. Due to the precession or wobble of the Earth's axis, the south and north celestial poles move in a circular fashion and complete one circuit over the course of approximately 26,000 years. Thus, eventually, Polaris would cease to be the North Star, and another circumpolar star, like Gamma Cephei in Cepheus constellation, would take its place. From approximately 3942 BCE to 1793 BCE, Thuban, or Alpha Draconis, was the North Star. Thuban is the alpha star of the northern constellation of Draco, the dragon. We see a picture in the heavens that since the time of creation, Draco sought the central position of the northern wheel of stars, the highest of heaven. Thuban occupied the position of the North Polar Star until shortly after the Messianic promise was given to Abraham around 1877 BCE. At this time, the northern celestial pole began shifting toward Kochab in the constellation Ursa Minor, where it remained from about 1500 BCE to 100 CE. Eventually, it shifted to Polaris, which is also in Ursa Minor, from about 500 CE to present. Around 3000 CE, the North Star will shift to Gamma Cephei in the constellation Cepheus. The Arabic name for this star is Arai, which means the shepherd. Cepheus is depicted as a king on his throne, and this may be the astronomical symbol for the king that Ezekiel described as sitting above the crystal expanse upon a rainbow throne. The following artwork depicts the circle of the ecliptic with the 12 major constellations. Within this circle is depicted the northern circumpolar constellations, which make up the wheel within a wheel. This graphic is a close-up that demonstrates only the northern circumpolar constellations. Thuban is the Arabic word for large snake, such as a python or a legendary draconian serpent. It is sometimes known as the dragon's tail, due to its position on the tail of the constellation, which takes the form of a dragon or serpent. The dragon's tail is mentioned in the astrological text of Revelation chapter 12.
And a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed in the sun with the moon under her feet and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and crying out in the pain and agony of giving birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, a huge red dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns and 7 royal crowns on his heads. His tail swept a third of the stars from the sky, tossing them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, ready to devour her child as soon as she gave birth. And she gave birth to a son, a male child who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. And her child was caught up to God and to his throne. Revelation 12:1-5.
Satan attempted to thwart God's promise to Abraham that he would bless all nations through his promised seed, the Messiah. Through Herod, Satan tried to kill Yeshua just following his birth. But Joseph was warned by the angel to flee to Egypt. In this passage, the dragon's tail is said to have at one point drawn or dragged 1/3 of the stars from the sky, tossing them to the earth. Stars falling is symbolic of judgment and destruction, and in earthly terms, it often refers to the downfall of kings, rulers, and important dignitaries. Satan's fall is described in Ezekiel chapter 28. Here it is the king of Tyre that is being addressed, but spiritually it refers to Satan.
You were anointed as a guardian cherub, for I had ordained you. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked among the fiery stones. From the day you were created you were blameless in your ways, until wickedness was found in you. By the vastness of your trade, you were filled with violence and you sinned. So I drove you in disgrace from the mountain of God, and I banished you, O guardian cherub, from among the fiery stones. Your heart grew proud of your beauty, you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor, so I cast you to the earth, I made you a spectacle before kings. Ezekiel 28:14-17.
Satan's fall is described as taking 1/3 of the stars, but what does this refer to? Many have speculated that it refers to 1/3 of the angels of heaven joining Satan in rebellion. Although this is possible, it's not specifically stated. Rather, we can see that the constellation Draco takes up approximately 1/3 of the northern wheel of precession. The message in the stars is that the dragon's position and power was cast down following his prideful rebellion, and this is depicted in the northern wheel when the northern celestial pole began drifting away from Draco and towards Kochab, just following the messianic promise to Abraham around 1877 BCE. Thus, the constellation Draco no longer held the highest position in the sides of the north from this moment forward. Regulus is the chief royal star of heaven and represents the prince. Jupiter represents the king. Because the astrological text of Revelation chapter 12 depicts Satan's attempt to assassinate the promised king of Israel, it also follows that the other astrological components found in this passage pertain to the birth of the Messiah. These components include a woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, a crown of 12 stars at her head, and being described as pregnant, about to give birth. Based upon the use of Revelation 12 as the definitive biblical text identifying the astronomical indicators surrounding his birth, a birth date of Tishri 1 of 3 BCE can be ascertained. The birth date of Yeshua. Yeshua was born Tishri 1 of 3 BCE using historical dating, equivalent to 9/11 - 2 in astronomical dating. Remember that because astronomical dating includes a year 0, dates in BCE will be 1 year ahead. Thus, 3 BCE historical dating is equivalent to -2 astronomical dating. Tishri 1 is the day of counting the regnal year for a king, It is the biblical holy day known as Yom Teruah, which means Day of the Trumpet. It is also known as Rosh Hashanah, or Head of the Year. This means Yeshua was 29 years of age by the winter in January-February of 28 CE when he was baptized. On his birth date, Jupiter, the king's planet, came into conjunction with Regulus, the king's star. Just before sunrise in Jerusalem, at this time, the Magi would have been able to look eastward and observe Jupiter rising in conjunction with Regulus. This would have signaled to them the birth of the Messiah, and they would have made preparations to go and meet him.
Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising, and have come to pay him homage.
Over the course of the next 9 months, Jupiter was in retrograde motion, encircling or crowning the chief star of the constellation Leo. That chief star is called Regulus and is also known as the Heart of the Lion. This crowning of Regulus is a sign of the anointing of the King of Israel from the tribe of Judah. This retrograde movement occurred for approximately 9 months, from September to June of the following year, after which time it began traversing towards and into the constellation Virgo. This approximate 9-month period may be a second witness to the concept of pregnancy. This birth date of Tishri 1 of 3 BCE is based upon and corroborated by the Revelation 12 sign, which was seen in the heavens on this date. During this time, the sun was passing through the lower portion of the constellation Virgo near her womb, as if clothing the woman and signifying a pregnant woman in labor. This happens every year, and so this alone is insignificant. Along with this, however, the moon was located under her feet, beyond the 30-degree marker and actually in Libra. The constellation Leo is juxtaposed to Virgo. In fact, the head of Virgo overlaps into the house of Leo. Leo has 9 stars attributed to it, with the addition of Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury being located on or above the upper portion of Virgo. There was a total sum of 12 stars, because remember, planets are wandering stars, so there were 12 stars crowning her head. This phenomenon began occurring precisely on Tishri 1 of 3 BCE. Although this would not have been visible during the day due to the sunlight, nor during the night due to the Earth blocking their view, the Magi would have been tracking these planets and known exactly what was occurring on such a rare and spectacular event. Tishri 1, or Yom Teruah, is the regnal date for Hebrew kings, and it's important to note that Yeshua being born on Tishri 1 was an indication of his coronation as the King of Judea and King of Israel. The Magi arrived and reported to King Herod the sign they observed in the heavens, signaling the birth of the Jewish Messiah. They had arrived some time after his birth, but were still tracking the movement of the king's star. During Jupiter's time in Leo, it could only be seen in the early morning hours before being dimmed out by the sun. It set below the Earth's horizon before sunset, making it invisible for most of the night. This means that the Magi would have been able to see it rise, but not been able to see Jupiter that evening until the early morning hours where they would see it rise again. By the time December came around, they would be able to see Jupiter in the night sky just after sunset around 8 p.m., where it would rise in the east and set in the west. While lying on your back and gazing at the stars at night, the position in the sky directly overhead is known as your zenith. The zenith is 90 degrees from the horizon. Astrologers would specifically be tracking the movement of planets as they traverse the circle of the ecliptic. Because of the Earth's horizon, only a portion of this circle is visible. Thus, the planet being tracked moves in an arc from our visible perspective. The highest point of this arc motion of a planet is known as midheaven, also known as culmination or meridian transit in astronomy. It will rise in the eastern sky and set in the western sky, but midheaven is the exact midpoint between the two. According to Everybody Wiki,
the midheaven is a point of definition in the ecliptic coordinate system used in astrology. It is defined as the part of the ecliptic that corresponds to the highest point in a celestial object's apparent daily traverse of the visible sky, midway between its ascension on the eastern horizon and descension on the western horizon.
By the time Jupiter reached midheaven, around 3:30 a.m., the Magi would have been able to look up and see it in the middle of the sky, where it was positioned just toward the south. I doubt that the Magi stayed up until 3:30 a.m. most nights to look for the star, but perhaps on this occasion they would be awake to track the star's position. By the following April, Jupiter was visible in midheaven just after sunset around 7:30 p.m. Looking directly up at the night sky just after sunset when the stars are visible, the Magi would have seen Jupiter almost directly overhead, yet positioned slightly south, as if to point southward toward Bethlehem. So from their perspective, the king's planet was not precisely overhead, but rather over a position somewhere to the south, and Bethlehem lies just south of Jerusalem, meaning the king's star positioned itself over Bethlehem from their perspective. Here's a view of the night sky as seen from Jerusalem, Israel, on April 1st of 2 BCE, about 7 months after Yeshua's birth. This is a screenshot from Stellarium software. Note Jupiter's midheaven location falling slightly to the south. Jupiter is high enough in the sky to be visualized above anything that could be blocking their view from the horizon, such as trees or Judean hillside. But it is also positioned slightly to the south, so the Magi would have been able to look up into the night sky over the tree line and see Jupiter easily visualized, pointing southward. Note that Jupiter's path across the sky follows the line of the ecliptic, which is always at 23.5 degrees to the Earth's equator. This means that Jupiter's path does not change. Its midheaven location will always be slightly towards the south when it is visible in the sky from Jerusalem. However, it is not always visible, and this is key. The first time Jupiter was visible at midheaven following the Revelation 12 sign was around November 14th around 3:30 a.m. It was visible shortly after sunset by late December and reached midheaven around midnight. By April, it was visible at midheaven just after sunset. This means there was a 5-month window in which Jupiter could be visualized at midheaven in its position towards the south. Assuming that the Magi left in late September after making preparations for the journey, this allows a 7-month window for their travels before arriving to pay homage to the newborn king.
Then Herod called the Magi secretly and learned from them the exact time the star had appeared. And sending them to Bethlehem, he said, "Go and search carefully for the child, and when you find him report to me so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stood over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with great delight. Matthew 2:7-10.
Likely having been trained by the protégés of the prophet Daniel, the Magi would have already known that the Messiah was to be born in Bethlehem.
But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, who are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come forth for me one to be ruler over Israel, one whose origins are of old from the days of eternity. Therefore Israel will be abandoned until she who is in labor has given birth. Micah 5:2-3.
They would have also attributed his origins to be from eternity, just as Yeshua's origin is described in Hebrews and likened unto Melchizedek.
First, his name means King of Righteousness. Then also, King of Salem means King of Peace. Without father or mother or genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life, like the Son of God, he remains a priest for all time. Hebrews 7:2-3.
Perhaps the Magi had originally arrived in Jerusalem assuming that great pomp and ceremony had been undertaken for the newly born king. To their dismay, the child was nowhere to be found among the king's court. To their excitement, by the time they had begun their journey south toward Bethlehem, the king's star had become visible in the evening sky, pointing southward towards their destination. Bethlehem is known for its shepherds, who provide lambs for Passover each year. The Magi's arrival, likely in the spring, coincided with the time of preparing lambs for Passover. During this time, they brought gifts to the king, anointing him and recognizing his sovereignty. By summer, Jupiter's retrograde motion had ended, and its time in Leo had come to a close as it began to enter Virgo. A Tishri 1, 3 BCE birth date of Yeshua meets all the required chronological criteria and matches the narrative of the events of the Magi found in Matthew chapter 2. It also fulfills the astrological signs given in Revelation 12 concerning the birth of the Messiah. In my opinion, no other birth date theory fits the biblical, chronological, and astrological narrative as well as Tishri 1, 3 BCE. For more information on the astronomical phenomena surrounding the Magi, please see the video produced by the Tesseract Order of Magi entitled The Great Mazzaroth Part 4, which can be found on the Hakim YouTube page. Now that we have gone deep into understanding the Mazzaroth and determined what I believe to be the most likely birth date for our Messiah, Tishri 1 of 3 BCE, we can move forward to evaluating the evidence for the historical dating of his baptism and ministry. I hope you'll join me next time, and as always, Shalom.